Alan Porter rubbed his tired eyes and stared at the monitor once more. The anomaly near Jupiter's orbit hadn't disappeared. In fact, it had grown larger overnight. He took another sip of cold coffee and ran the detection algorithm again. That can't be right, he muttered to himself. For 3 years, Alan had worked the night shift at NASA's Deep Space Monitoring Facility in Arizona. Most nights were quiet. A few asteroid tracks to update, satellite data to process, the occasional interesting solar flare. But tonight was different. The energy readings coming from beyond Jupiter were unlike anything in NASA's records. Alan picked up the phone and dialed his supervisor's extension. "Do you know what time it is, Porter?" Linda Garcia's voice was thick with sleep. "I wouldn't call if it wasn't important," Alan said. "There's something out there, Linda. Something big." 30 minutes later, Linda stood behind Alan, her arms crossed as she studied the screens. Her dark hair was pulled back hastily and she wore a NASA sweatshirt over her pajama top. "Show me the comparison to known signatures again," she said. Alan pulled up a chart. "Here's a Saturn V rocket launch. Here's the Voyager probe. Here's the energy output from the sun during a Class X solar flare." He pointed to a red line that dwarfed all the others. "And here's what I'm seeing now." Linda leaned closer. "That's impossible." "It's not natural," Alan said quietly. "And it's not one of ours." By morning, the facility was buzzing with activity. Additional telescopes and sensors were directed toward the anomaly. Confirmation came from observatories in Chile, Hawaii, and Japan. Something was there, multiple somethings, and they were massive. 2 days later, Alan found himself in an underground conference room at the Pentagon. Linda sat beside him, along with the NASA director and 3 stern-faced military officers. "Dr. Porter, please explain what you found," said General Howard, a broad-shouldered man with close-cropped gray hair. Alan stood and projected his data onto the wall screen. "What we're seeing is a fleet of vessels near Jupiter's orbit. Based on their energy signatures and movement patterns, we estimate there are between 200 and 300 large ships, with perhaps thousands of smaller craft." The room was silent. "How certain are you that these are artificial vessels?" asked a woman in a dark suit who had not introduced herself. 100%, Alan replied. "They're using some form of propulsion we don't understand, but the energy patterns are clearly controlled and purposeful. They've arranged themselves in a formation that couldn't occur naturally." "Are they coming toward Earth?" General Howard asked. "No, sir. They appear to be in a holding pattern, almost as if they're waiting for something. The President authorized a mission within hours. The USS Endeavour, a newly commissioned deep space vessel equipped with experimental drive technology, would depart from lunar orbit the following day. Its mission: approach the alien fleet and attempt peaceful contact. Captain Frank Morrison received his orders while supervising final tests on the Endeavour's navigation systems. At 42, Morrison had piloted everything from fighter jets to space shuttles. But this would be his first command beyond Earth orbit. "We're actually doing this," he said to his XO, Commander Diana Kelly, as they reviewed the mission parameters. "Making first contact." Diana smiled tightly. "Let's hope they're friendly." The assembled crew was small but elite. Dr. Kate Williams, one of Earth's foremost linguists with specializations in mathematical language and pattern recognition, would lead communication efforts. Chief Science Officer Peter Daniels had 3 PhDs and had written the textbook on theoretical xenobiology. Security Chief Maria Lopez had served with distinction in the Space Force and brought a cautious pragmatism to the mission planning. "Our approach will be slow and transparent," Morrison told them during the final briefing. "We'll broadcast on all frequencies using mathematical sequences that should be recognizable to any advanced species. Dr. Williams has prepared messages demonstrating peaceful intent." Kate nodded. "We'll start with prime numbers, simple mathematics, then progress to basic symbolic representations of human form and solar system configuration." "What if they don't respond?" asked Lopez. We maintain distance and continue broadcasting, Morrison said. Under no circumstances do we approach within weapons range, assuming they have weapons. They built interstellar ships, Lopez said grimly. They have weapons. The Endeavour departed from lunar base the next morning. The experimental drive performed better than expected, and within 3 days they approached Jupiter's orbit. The alien fleet became visible through the ship's telescopes. Massive dark shapes against the stars, some larger than anything humans had ever built. "My God," whispered Daniels as he studied the readings. "The energy they're putting out. Just to remain stationary. Their technology is centuries beyond ours." Morrison addressed the crew over the intercom. "We are now approximately 6 million kilometers from the alien fleet. We will hold this position and begin broadcasting our prepared messages. All stations report status." One by one, the department heads confirmed readiness. Kate Williams initiated the first communication sequence, a series of pulses representing the first 10 prime numbers, followed by simple geometric shapes. For 12 hours they broadcast and waited. Nothing changed. The alien fleet remained in formation, silent and mysterious. Could they be some kind of automated system, Daniel suggested? Perhaps the vessels are empty, a left-behind armada from a long-dead civilization. Before Kate could respond, her console lit up with activity. "Movement," reported Lopez from Tactical. "We've got multiple smaller craft breaking formation. They're moving in our direction." On the main view screen, they watched as a dozen sleek vessels detached from the main fleet and accelerated toward the Endeavour. "Maintain position," Morrison ordered. "Continue broadcasting peaceful intent." Kate adjusted the message, adding more. "Complex mathematical concepts and basic chemical formulas for water and organic compounds. I'm trying to communicate that we're carbon-based life forms from the third planet in our system." The alien vessels slowed as they approached, arranging themselves in a half-circle formation 500,000 kilometers from the Endeavour. "They're scanning us," reported Daniels, studying his instruments. "Multiple frequencies, including some we can't even detect properly." A new signal appeared on Kate's communications panel. "Captain, they're responding." The crew gathered around as Kate's computer processed the incoming data. Patterns emerged, mathematical at first, then increasingly complex. Within hours, Kate had established a rudimentary translation matrix. "They call themselves the Vraks," she announced. "From what I can gather, they're refugees. They fled their home system because of some kind of catastrophe." Morrison considered this information. "Invite a delegation to come aboard. Let's show them humanity's hospitality." 6 hours later, a small Vrak shuttle docked with the Endeavour. The crew assembled in the meeting room adjacent to the airlock, hearts pounding with anticipation. The inner door slid open, and the aliens entered. They stood slightly taller than humans, with slender bodies covered in what appeared to be environmental suits. Their heads were elongated, with large, multifaceted eyes that gleamed with intelligence. They moved with fluid grace despite the unfamiliar gravity. Kate stepped forward and carefully reproduced the greeting sound they had transmitted earlier. The lead alien tilted its head and responded with a series of clicks and whistles. Kate's translation device processed the sounds. "We meet those who dwell in the warm worlds. Long have we traveled." First contact had been achieved. Humanity was no longer alone in the universe. But as Security Chief Lopez watched the visitors examining the ship's systems with intense interest, she couldn't shake a feeling of unease. Something about their movements seemed too calculated, too focused on the Endeavour's capabilities rather than its people. The aliens asked to see the ship's navigation systems. When Captain Morrison hesitated, the lead Virax turned its large eyes toward him and said something that made Kate's translation device pause before rendering, "Show us the way home." Captain Morrison led the Virax delegation to a conference room instead of the navigation center. His instincts told him to be careful, despite the seemingly peaceful first contact. The three aliens moved with strange grace, their environmental suits making soft hissing sounds with each step. "We can share information about our star systems," Morrison said as they sat around the oval table. "But first, we'd like to learn more about you and why you're here." Kate Williams worked quickly with her translation device, converting his words into the clicking language of the Virax. The lead alien, who had introduced itself as Elder Krell, responded with a series of rapid sounds. "Our world died," came the translation. "A great enemy brought destruction. We travel long cycles seeking new home." "Who was this enemy?" asked Peter Daniels, leaning forward with interest. The three aliens stiffened noticeably. Their large eyes blinked in unison. "They came with noise and light," Elder Krell replied. "They spoke death across great distance. We few survived. We fled." Maria Lopez watched from near the door, her hand never far from her sidearm. Something about the way the aliens looked around the room made her nervous. They seemed to be cataloging everything, measuring distances, noting the locations of control panels and exits. "How many of your people survived?" Kate asked gently. "Many ships, many Virax. Not enough to fill even small moons of your gas giant. We need world, warm world." Morrison nodded sympathetically. "There are several potentially habitable planets in nearby systems we could discuss. We would need to establish diplomatic relations," and he was interrupted by the ship's communication system. Sam Russell, a young communications officer, called from the bridge. "Captain, we're receiving an urgent message from Earth. Should I patch it through?" "Not now, Russell," Morrison replied firmly. "We're in the middle of—" But Russell had already activated the channel. The room's speaker suddenly filled with a military transmission, discussing Earth's defensive capabilities and preparations in case the alien fleet proved hostile. "Orbital platforms are armed, but wouldn't stand a chance against that many ships. Pentagon wants a full assessment of their weapons and—" Morrison lunged for the control panel and cut the transmission. "I apologize for the interruption." But something had changed. The three Vracs were standing now, their bodies vibrating in what seemed like agitation. Elder Krell emitted a high-pitched series of clicks that the translation device struggled to process. "They sound like them," the translation finally offered. "The destroyers, the noisemakers." Lopez moved toward the captain. "Sir, I think we should—" She never finished her sentence. The smallest of the three aliens produced a device from its suit and pointed it at the door. There was no sound, no flash of light, but the heavy metal door suddenly melted into a puddle of liquid that spread across the floor. "What the hell?" Morrison shouted, reaching for his communicator. "Security to conference room A." Elder Krell moved with shocking speed, grasping Morrison's wrist with a three-fingered hand. Even through the environmental suit, the alien's strength was overwhelming. "You hide your nature," the translation device rendered as Krell spoke. "But we remember. Voice pattern same. You are their scouts." Kate stepped forward, her hands raised in a universal gesture of peace. "There's been a misunderstanding. We're not your enemy. We've never encountered your species before today." The aliens conferred among themselves in rapid clicks too fast for the translation device to process. Then Elder Krell turned to face them again. "We will verify. 3 of you come to our vessel." It wasn't a request. The smallest alien pointed its melting device at Peter Daniels, who backed against the wall in terror. Morrison made a quick decision. "I'll go," he said, "along with Dr. Williams and Chief Lopez. The rest of my crew stays here." Elder Krell seemed to consider this, then made a sound of agreement. "You come, learn truth. Others remain as bond." As they were escorted through the Endeavor's corridors, Lopez managed to whisper to Morrison, "This is a mistake, Captain. We shouldn't leave the ship." "We don't have a choice," Morrison replied under his breath. "If they think we're allied with their old enemy, they might attack Earth immediately. We need to convince them otherwise." Kate was frantically adjusting her translation device. "Captain, I think there's something wrong with the translators. Some of their sound frequencies might have cultural or emotional connotations we're missing." They reached the airlock where the Vrac shuttle had docked. 2 more aliens waited there, holding devices similar to the one that had melted the conference room door. Before stepping into the alien shuttle, Morrison managed to activate his emergency beacon, a distress signal that would transmit his location to Earth. He caught Lopez's eye and she nodded slightly, understanding his plan. The shuttle was a cramped, dimly lit space filled with unfamiliar technology. The walls pulsed with faint bioluminescence, and the air had a strange metallic taste even through the human-breathing masks they'd been ordered to wear. As they detached from the Endeavor, Kate tried once more to communicate. "Please understand, we have no knowledge of your enemy. Our species has never traveled beyond our own solar system before now." Elder Krell studied her through its large, faceted eyes. "We will know soon. The Arbiter will search your minds." The shuttle accelerated toward one of the largest vessels in the alien fleet, a massive ship that seemed to absorb rather than reflect light from distant Jupiter. As they approached, Morrison could see that what had appeared to be a solid hull was actually a complex structure of interlocking sections that moved independently of each other, like a living organism. Back on the Endeavor, chaos erupted when the remaining crew discovered what had happened. Commander Diana Kelly took charge, ordering an immediate message to be sent to Earth. "This is Commander Kelly of the USS Endeavor. First contact has failed. Captain Morrison, Dr. Williams, and Chief Lopez have been taken aboard an alien vessel. The visitors called themselves the Vracs and appeared to believe we are related to an enemy from their past. They became hostile after hearing human speech patterns. We require immediate instructions." As the message was transmitted toward Earth, the Endeavor's sensors detected alarming changes in the alien fleet. Ships were beginning to move, reorganizing their formation. Energy readings spiked across the fleet. On the alien mothership, Morrison, Kate, and Lopez were brought before what the Vracs called the Arbiter, a being larger than the others, connected to the ship itself through a web of pulsing, organic-looking cables. "We will know your truth," Elder Krell said as the Arbiter extended a tendril toward Kate's head. She screamed as the tendril made contact, not from pain, but from the sudden flood of alien thoughts into her mind. Images of burning worlds, devastating weapons, and a merciless enemy that used sound as a weapon. "They think we're their enemy, because our voices operate in the same frequency range," she gasped as the tendril withdrew. "Their old enemy used sound-based weapons!" The Arbiter made a sound like cracking ice. The translation came through Kate's device in broken fragments. "The pattern matches. The destroyers return. Protect the remnant. Cleanse the threat." Morrison lunged forward. "You're making a mistake. We're not your enemy." But the decision had been made. The Arbiter gave a command, and the massive alien fleet began to move toward Earth. Lopez managed to activate her communicator one last time before it was taken from her. Her message was brief but clear. "They're coming. They think we're their ancient enemy." The emergency alert blared across every television, radio, and cell phone on Earth. Panic spread through cities as people looked up at the sky, wondering when the alien ships would appear. Military bases around the world went into high alert, preparing for an enemy unlike any they had faced before. At NASA headquarters, Alan Porter stared at the incoming data with growing horror. The Vracs fleet had changed course and was moving toward Earth at incredible speed. "They'll be here in less than 48 hours, he told Linda Garcia, who hadn't left his side since the crisis began. Linda nodded grimly. "The President is addressing the United Nations now. They're trying to coordinate a global defense." "Defense?" Alan laughed bitterly. "Did you see the energy readings from those ships? One of their vessels could probably take out a continent." "We have to try something," Linda said. She pointed to a notification on Alan's screen. "The military wants you at the Pentagon. Now." 6. Hours later, Alan found himself in a crowded war room deep beneath the Pentagon. Military leaders from a dozen countries argued over strategy, while scientists proposed theoretical weapons that might work against the advanced alien technology. General Howard spotted Alan and waved him over to a table where a man in civilian clothes studied a map of Earth. "Dr. Porter, this is Jack Sanders. He used to be our top military strategist before he retired to Maine." The older man looked up. His weathered face showed little emotion, but his eyes were sharp. "You're the one who spotted them first," Jack said. "Tell me what you know about their technology." Alan explained what they had learned from the Endeavor's data. "Their ships manipulate gravity somehow. It makes them incredibly fast and probably renders most of our weapons useless. Missiles would just curve away from their hulls. "What about nukes?" asked a Russian general. "Even if we could get them close enough, the radiation might not affect them. The Vraks wear environmental suits even on their own ships. They might be resistant to conditions that would kill humans." Jack tapped the map thoughtfully. "We need to think differently. They believe we're their enemy, but they're wrong. So our real problem is communication, not firepower." Before anyone could respond, an aide rushed in with a tablet. "Sir, we're detecting energy signatures in high orbit. The first alien ships are arriving." The world watched in stunned silence as the massive Vraks vessels entered Earth's atmosphere. They positioned themselves above major cities: New York, Beijing, London, Moscow, Tokyo. Smaller craft descended through the clouds, landing in strategic locations. But the expected destruction didn't come. Instead, the aliens began building structures, tall crystalline towers that hummed with energy. In rural Oregon, a farmer named Greg Bennett watched from his barn as one such tower rose in the distance. Greg was no ordinary farmer. Before buying this land, he had served 15 years as a Navy SEAL. When his phone stopped working and the power went out, Greg knew something was wrong. He loaded his truck with supplies and drove toward the alien structure, his old military instincts kicking in. He wasn't the only one. A small group had gathered at a safe distance from the tower: a police officer, a doctor, and several locals. Among them was Olivia Harris, a NASA scientist who had been visiting family when the invasion began. "Those towers are blocking communications," Olivia explained when Greg introduced himself. "They're setting up a grid pattern across the country." "Why aren't they just destroying everything?" asked the police officer. "They're preparing for something," Greg said. "This isn't a hit and run. They're planning to stay." Over the next few days, they observed the alien activity. The Vraks expanded their perimeter around the tower, gathering Earth materials and setting up smaller structures. "Look at their suits," Olivia said, as they watched through binoculars. "They never take them off, even inside their buildings." Greg nodded. "You thinking what I'm thinking?" "They can't breathe our air," she confirmed. "Something in Earth's atmosphere is harmful to them." This gave them their first advantage. When a small Vrak scout ship crashed after a lightning strike, Greg led a team to investigate. The ship had skidded into a ravine, its hull cracked. Inside, they found one dead alien and another barely moving. Its environmental suit was torn, exposing grayish skin that seemed to be dissolving on contact with air. Olivia examined the ship's systems while Greg checked for weapons. The dying alien watched them with its large eyes but made no move to attack. "I think I can access their data," Olivia said, connecting her laptop to an alien console. The lightning fried their security systems. The alien suddenly began making clicking sounds. To everyone's surprise, its suit translated in a mechanical voice. "You are not the sound makers." Greg approached cautiously. "No, we're humans. This is our planet." "Mistake," the alien said, its breathing labored. "Great mistake. The elders saw your signals, heard your voices. Patterns matched." "We're not your enemy," Olivia said. "Tell your leaders to stop this invasion." "Too late," the alien replied. "Terraforming begun. Your atmosphere, changing to Vrak's homeworld. You will die. We will live." The alien's eyes dulled as its body succumbed to Earth's air. But Olivia had managed to download massive amounts of data from the ship's computers. Back at their makeshift camp, she analyzed the information. "These towers aren't just for communication. They're changing our atmosphere, adding compounds that will make Earth habitable for them. And kill us in the process," Greg added. "We have maybe 2 weeks before the air becomes toxic to humans," Olivia said. "They're doing exactly what we feared aliens might do, terraforming Earth to suit themselves." "But they still think we're these sound makers," Greg said. "If we could just convince them otherwise." Meanwhile, in a Virax holding cell aboard, their mothership, Captain Morrison, Kate Williams, and Maria Lopez had not given up. The aliens were studying them, trying to confirm their connection to the ancient enemy. Kate had made a crucial discovery. By carefully listening to the Virax language, she realized that certain sound frequencies had specific emotional impacts on them. The frequencies of normal human speech overlapped with what the Virax associated with threats. If we modify how we speak, lower the pitch and change the rhythm, they might listen to us, she told Morrison. Lopez had been working on another angle. Through a small tear in her sleeve, she had exposed a tiny patch of skin to the air in the cell. After initial irritation, the skin had adapted. Their air isn't immediately fatal to us, she reported. Our bodies can adjust, but I bet they can't adjust to ours. Morrison nodded. So Earth itself is fighting back. The question is, can we get this information to Earth before it's too late? Their chance came when a group of Vrax scientists arrived to take blood samples. Kate tried her modified speech pattern, talking in a lower register with altered rhythms. The alien scientists paused, clearly surprised by the change. We, not enemy, Kate said slowly in the altered voice. Different species from sound makers. The head scientist studied her for a long moment, then responded in clicks that their translation device interpreted. Prove this. Back on Earth, Olivia made a breakthrough with the alien data. Look at this, she told Greg, pointing to her screen. The Vrax have detailed biological profiles of these sound makers who attacked them. If we can show them our DNA is different. Greg was already thinking ahead. We need to broadcast this information globally and directly to their fleet. But how? They've taken down our communications. Olivia smiled for the first time in days. They've taken down our normal communications, but there's a backup system the military built after the Cold War. LF waves that can penetrate almost anything. And you know how to access this system? Greg asked. No, Olivia admitted. But I know someone who does. We need to find Dr. Alan Porter. Finding Dr. Alan Porter proved easier than Greg and Olivia expected. As the scientist who first discovered the alien fleet, Porter had become valuable to military operations. When the Virax disabled normal communications, the military moved him to a secure underground facility in Montana. Greg used his old military contacts to get a message through, and 3 days later, they were driving through a checkpoint into a hidden base built inside a mountain. So you're the SEAL turned farmer, Alan said as they were introduced in a crowded operations room. Linda Garcia stood beside him, studying the data Olivia had brought from the crashed ship. And you're the guy who found the aliens, Greg replied. Nice work. Alan smiled tiredly. Not feeling too proud of that right now. Linda interrupted their conversation. These atmospheric compounds the Virax are releasing, we've detected them too. Early estimates gave us 3 weeks before oxygen levels dropped too low for human survival. Our analysis says 2 weeks, Olivia corrected. But we have something else. She showed them the biological data from the crashed ship. The Vrax are mistaking us for another species they call the sound makers. Look at this DNA structure. It's completely different from human DNA. Alan studied the screen with growing excitement. If we could show this to the Vrax leadership, that's why we need the ELF system, Greg said. Extreme low frequency. The communication system that can penetrate anything. Linda looked skeptical. That system was designed for communicating with nuclear submarines, not aliens. But it still works, Alan confirmed. And the Vrax haven't disabled it because it's so old and uses different technology than our modern systems. The problem is the main transmission facility is in Alaska, Linda said. And Alaska is now under heavy Vrax control. Greg exchanged looks with Olivia. Then we go to Alaska. Meanwhile, aboard the Vrax mothership, Kate Williams had made unexpected progress. Her modified speaking pattern had intrigued a young Vrax scientist named Xal, who began spending extra time studying the human prisoners. Your speech patterns changing, Xal noted through the translation device. Why? To show we different from sound makers, Kate explained in the lower register she had developed. Humans, not your enemy. Xal seemed skeptical but curious. The elders say all creatures with your vocal patterns are dangerous. The war destroyed our home system. Captain Morrison joined the conversation, also using the modified speech pattern. How long ago war happened? 5,000 cycles, Kazal replied. Our species only developed space travel recently, Morrison explained. We could not have fought your people 5,000 cycles ago. This gave Kazal pause. The alien turned to its companion, and they exchanged rapid clicks. Showproof, Kazal finally said. Lopez, who had been closely observing the aliens, spoke up. Your air hurts us first, then we adapt. But our air kills you. Different biology. Not same species as sound makers. Kazal's large eyes blinked rapidly. What they had learned was a sign of deep thought among the Vraks. I will consult with Science Council. After Kazal left, Morrison turned to his companions. We're making progress, but too slowly. If what they told us about terraforming is true, Earth doesn't have much time. Back on Earth, preparations for the Alaska mission moved quickly. A small team was assembled. Greg, Olivia, Alan, and a handful of Special Forces soldiers. They would fly to a remote airstrip near the Canadian border, then travel overland to the ALF facility. The Vraks seemed to be concentrating on population centers, Linda explained during their final briefing. The wilderness areas aren't heavily patrolled. Still, expect resistance, especially as you get closer to the facility. What exactly will we be transmitting? One of the soldiers asked. Alan held up a data drive. A message that proves we're not the sound makers. DNA comparisons, vocal pattern analysis, and historical records showing humans were still living in caves when the Vraks War happened. Plus, a request for communication from their leadership. And if they don't believe us? Greg asked. Then we're all dead anyway, Alan replied grimly. The journey to Alaska was tense but uneventful. Their small plane landed on an abandoned logging road, and they began the long trek through dense forest toward the ELF facility. The first sign of trouble came as they crossed a ridge overlooking a valley. Look, whispered Olivia, pointing to a clearing below. A small Vraks outpost had been established. 3 aliens in their environmental suits moved around equipment that hummed with energy. They've set up a monitoring station, Alan said, probably tracking wildlife to see how Earth species are responding to the atmospheric changes. Greg studied the outpost through binoculars. We need to go around, we can't risk alerting them. As they carefully made their way through the forest, Olivia noticed something strange. The plants near their equipment, they're dying. Alan examined a withered bush. It's the compounds they're releasing. Earth's ecosystem is rejecting them. They continued their journey, moving only at night and hiding during the day. After 4 exhausting days, they reached the ELF facility, a sprawling complex of antennas and buildings surrounded by a high fence. No obvious Vraks presence, Greg noted as they observed from the tree line. They might not understand what this place is, or they're waiting inside, a soldier warned. They approached cautiously, cutting through the fence and entering the main building with weapons ready. The facility appeared deserted, emergency lights casting an eerie glow over silent equipment. Power's still on, Alan said with relief. The system has its own generators. They made their way to the control room, where Alan and Olivia immediately began working on the transmission equipment. This system was designed to send simple coded messages, Alan explained as he worked. We're going to overload it to send much more complex data. It might burn out after one transmission, so we get one chance. On the Virax mothership, Kazal returned to the human prisoners with unexpected news. The Science Council is divided, the alien told them. Some believe your claim, others say it is trick. What do you believe? Kate asked. Kazal hesitated. I have studied your cellular structure. It is different from records of sound makers. Then, help us, Morrison urged. Your people are killing an innocent species based on a mistake. What can one junior scientist do? Kazal asked. Maria Lopez, who had been quiet, spoke up. Take us to your leaders. Let us speak to them directly with our modified voices. Impossible, Kazal replied. The elders do not speak with captives. Then bring them our DNA evidence, Kate suggested. Show them we're not who they think we are. Kazal seemed to consider this. There is transmission happening now from your planet. Strange frequency. Elders are studying it. Morrison exchanged excited glances with his companions. That must be someone from Earth trying to communicate. Back at the ELF facility, Alan and Olivia had finished their preparations. Ready? Alan announced. Once we start transmitting, every Varax ship will detect it. They'll know exactly where we are. Greg nodded grimly. Do it. Alan pressed the sequence of buttons that began the transmission. The facility hummed with power as the ancient system pushed its limits, sending their message out on frequencies that could penetrate any barrier. Now we wait, Olivia said. They didn't have to wait long. Within minutes, they heard the sound of approaching ships. Greg readied his weapon. Time to see if our message worked or if we just painted a target on ourselves. 3 Varax ships descended through the clouds above the ELF facility. Greg and his team took defensive positions, weapons ready but hopes dim. They couldn't fight off alien technology with Earth guns. Keep transmitting as long as possible, Greg told Alan, who nodded grimly and continued monitoring the equipment. The lead ship hovered directly above the main building. Instead of weapons fire, a beam of light appeared, and 5 Varax in environmental suits materialized on the ground. Here we go, Greg muttered. He stepped forward, hands raised to show he wasn't holding a weapon. We come in peace, he said, using the lower speaking register Kate had discovered. The tallest Varax stepped forward. Unlike the others, its suit had markings that suggested higher rank. The alien studied Greg, then spoke through a translation device. Your transmission, interesting. You claim not to be sound makers. We are humans, Olivia said, also using the modified voice pattern. Different species. The DNA evidence proves it. The Varax leader made a gesture and the other aliens spread out surrounding the humans. You will come with us. The council must hear directly. Greg looked back at his team. They had no choice. We'll come. Aboard the Varax mothership, Captain. Morrison, Kate, and Lopez were surprised when guards entered their cell and escorted them to a large chamber they hadn't seen before. The room was circular with raised platforms where 7 elderly Varax sat in ornate suits connected to life support systems. The Council of Elders, Kate whispered. Before they could speak, another door opened. Greg, Olivia, Alan, and their team were led in. Alan, Morrison called out in surprise. The scientist broke into a relieved smile. Captain, you're alive. The lead elder raised a hand, silencing everyone. We have received your transmission, and we have studied your captives. There is Ligadout among us. Another elder spoke, its voice harsh through the translator. They could be evolved soundmakers. The enemy was cunning. 5,000 cycles is not enough time for a species to evolve so differently, Kate argued, careful to use the modified speech pattern. Alan stepped forward with a small device.
May I present evidence? After receiving a nod from the lead elder, Alan activated a holographic display showing DNA comparisons between humans and the recorded soundmaker biology. Our cellular structure is entirely different, he explained.
We are carbon-based with completely different genetic coding. The soundmakers were silicon-based according to your records. The elders conferred among themselves in rapid clicks too fast for translation. Finally, the lead elder spoke again. There is another way to be certain. The arbiter can examine all evidence directly. A section of the wall slid open, revealing the massive being Morrison, Kate, and Lopez had encountered before. The arbiter was even larger than they remembered, its body connected to the ship through countless pulsing tubes. The arbiter holds the complete memory of our civilization, explained the lead elder. It can determine truth beyond doubt. Greg stepped forward, bravely. What do we need to do? One of you must connect with the arbiter. It will examine your species' memories. It will be unpleasant, Morrison immediately volunteered. I'll do it. But Olivia stepped forward. No, I should go. I understand both the science and what's at stake. Before anyone could argue, she walked toward the arbiter. The massive being extended a tendril that attached to her forehead. Olivia gasped in pain but remained standing. For several tense minutes, no one moved. Olivia's eyes were wide open, but seeing nothing in the room as the Arbiter searched through her mind, and, through her, the collective knowledge of humanity. Finally, the tendril detached. Olivia collapsed and Greg rushed forward to catch her. The Arbiter made a series of deep, resonant sounds. The elders listened intently, their postures changing from rigid to what seemed like shock. The lead elder turned to the humans. The Arbiter confirms your truth. You are not sound makers. You are humans, a different species with no connection to our ancient enemy. Relief swept through the human group, but it was short-lived. However, the elder continued, our terraforming process cannot be stopped. It has progressed too far. What do you mean? Alan demanded. You're still going to kill us all? Kazal, who had been standing quietly at the side of the chamber, stepped forward. Honored elders, I have studied the human biology. They adapt quickly to environmental changes. With modifications, both species could survive on the same planet. An older Vrac scientist objected. Impossible. The terraforming compounds are toxic to Earth life. Not if we adjust the formula, Kazal argued. I have run simulations. A 15% reduction in certain compounds would allow Earth life to survive while still supporting our needs. The elders debated intensely. Finally, the lead elder raised a hand for silence. The mistake was ours, it acknowledged. We will modify the terraforming, but Earth will still change. Some areas will become uninhabitable for humans, and some will be uninhabitable for Vracs, Kazal added. We would need to share the planet, each species in compatible zones. Captain Morrison stepped forward. We can make this work. Earth is large, with many different environments. There's room for both species if we cooperate. Greg wasn't so easily convinced. How do we know you won't change your minds again? Our species could be extinct before we realize you've modified the formula back. A valid concern, the lead elder admitted. We propose an exchange. Some humans will live among Vracs and some Vracs will live among humans. Each will serve as witnesses and guarantors of the agreement. The next few days were a blur of diplomatic activity. The humans were given quarters aboard the mothership while details were negotiated. Earth governments, at first skeptical, came to understand that compromise was their only option for survival. 1 month later, Greg stood on a hillside overlooking what had been Seattle. The city was now covered in crystalline structures where Vracs could live without environmental suits. But just 30 miles east, human towns continued to thrive in the adjusted atmosphere. Alan and Olivia worked with Vrac scientists in a joint research facility, studying ways to further improve conditions for both species. Captain Morrison had become Earth's first ambassador to the Vracs Council, with Kate as his chief translator. Still don't trust them completely? Linda asked, joining Greg on the hillside. Would you? He replied. But I'm starting to believe this might actually work. Below them, a group of human children played near the border zone. A few young Vracs watched from their side, their environmental suits modified to allow greater movement. One brave Vrax child approached the border and offered a glowing crystal to a human girl. After a moment's hesitation, she accepted it. Different doesn't have to mean enemy, Linda said, watching the interaction. Greg nodded slowly. I guess that's the lesson in all this. We discovered an alien fleet and immediately regretted it, but maybe in the end, it's going to make us stronger. In orbit above Earth, the remaining Vrac ships had changed formation. No longer positioned for invasion, they now formed a protective ring around the planet. The Arbiter had detected signals, suggesting the real soundmakers might still exist in distant space. If they ever came looking for the Viracs again, they would find not one species but two, ready to defend their shared home. Together,